So from this lecture, we'll be studying about what is metamorphosis, what are different kinds of metamorphosis. Then we will see the formation of two adult structures, which is not found in the larval stage of your development, the wing and the legs. With that, we will finish our first part of our lecture, and for the second part, we'll be studying the influence of hormones in regulating the metamorphosis and what are the molecular mechanisms and genes involved with them. So we'll start with the first part, the metamorphosis of insects. Uh, so, so we have seen this fifth unit. We have been covering the post-embryonic developmental changes. We have already seen the regeneration through the regeneration of the limb in the anurans, and we also seen the aging process and the genes and other metabolisms that are affected by the process of aging, molecular mechanisms involved in the aging. Finally, we will be seeing this process of metamorphosis. Again, metamorphosis is a very unique process that happens post-embryonically. This is very different from the other two, where similar kind of structures, aging is uh, including aging in the post-embryonic developmental process is a highly debated topic, and some of the developmental biologists think that you don't have to include this in the post-embryonic development, as it is one of the process of the normal wear and tear. But some of the developmental biologists want to include this aging. Gerontology, probably you have heard about it already. Uh, so this two we have covered. We'll see the metamorphosis. What is metamorphosis about? So metamorphosis, as you know, it's like post-embryonic, embryonically. That means after the organism hatched out from the egg or released from the womb, uh, it will undergo again a rapid changes in its structures. So that is what we call it as metamorphosis. Probably some of you might have studied the Kafka's metamorphosis story, uh, which, which is quite interesting. Okay, so you can see there are three different kinds of metamorphosis: ametabolous, hemimetabolous, and holo. Holo as such, holo means full, hemi is half, a means nothing. So the ametabolous, there won't be any drastic changes in the structures. It is only thing is that when the animal hatched out from the egg, you can see it is a tiny portion of it. Simply you can see the increase in the size of all the body parts, so that the young almost resembles the adult, and it is like normal other animals, right? Baby develops in the adult. Similarly, a this part, right, when they hatched out from the egg is called as a pronym, whereas the adult is very similar. Adult and the uh, pronym are very similar in uh, looks. You can see this kind of development in the silverfish that we commonly find in the books and the uh, old cloths that are stored in the almirahs. You can see a silverfish. So that it undergoes this kind of ametabolous development. So hemimetabolous development, it's like you can still find out, this the early stages of the developmental structures like nymph or a pronym. You can easily make out it is a what kind of adult it is going to develop into. For example, the nymphs that you find in the houses, right? The cockroach nymphs. The only thing is that they are devoid of the wings. Almost a wingless cockroach is what you see as a nymph. So, so it is like even though it will undergo some changes, something called as instars, the molting process will happen, but still you can make out what is the adult that you are going to get from that particular young one. So that is what you call as a hemimetabolous development. You can see some differences, but not a completely change animal. You won't see that kind of a development. And this is what you call as a hemimetabolous development. So ametabolous, there is no change, simply they grow and increase their size. Whereas the hemimetabolous, there will be some changes, not very drastic one. Few structures are very primitive. For example, the wings are like the tiny wings you can observe here. In the early stages, like in the nymph 1 and the nymph 2, nymph stages, you don't even see the wings. So that is what we call as hemimetabolous development. Whereas the holometabolous development, you can see a complete transformation. Yet you don't even realize what kind of a organism is going to develop from the earlier stages of its development. For example, you never, unless otherwise you know it, you will not tell that a larva will develop into a beautiful butterfly. It's completely different in structure, functions, behaviors. Everything is very different, so that you will not find or you cannot make out the adult structures from the larva. So they have three different stages, as you know already. They have larva and a pupa and an adult. So larva will undergo several molting process. It's like every few days or few hours, depending upon the species, the external cuticular membrane, the cover will get off. They'll peel off that, then new cuticular membrane will be formed. Like that, several molting process will happen, and each molting is called as one instar. Right? For one instar means one molting process. So after certain molting, number of molting, that varies from species to species. They go into a stage called as pupal stage, where they look for a place where they can take rest and develop a pupa, develop a cocoon around them, so that it will be protected from the external environment when this transformation happens. During the pupal stages, the entire organism is like totally metabolically very less activities are going on, but there is no movement, nothing will happen. Only the cellular changes, cellular and tissue level changes are going to happen. So you have a larva, pupa, then after the complete metamorphosis, the metamorphosis process happen during the pupal stage. Okay. Only during the pupal stage you can see the metamorphosis, and at the end of the uh, metamorphosis process, the pupa will emerge as an adult, which is drastically completely different from one that enters into the metamorphic mold. So all these processes are controlled by hormones, particularly certain hormones like ecdysones and the juvenile hormones. We will be studying that in detail in the second part of the lecture, how these hormones are synchronized and how different genes are get activated in the presence of these hormones. And this part of the lecture, we will be studying about the two important developmental process, the development of the leg, how a leg is formed from the larva and how the wing is formed from the larva. Both the structures, we are not observing them in the larval stages. So look at that, the holometabolous insects, the insect that we are studying here, including our Drosophila and the butterfly, the development or the transformation happens in the pupal cuticle. You know that the cocoon. Inside the cocoon, there will be a cuticle cover, Inside that cuticle cover, this transformation is going to happen. So there are two different population of cells that are present in the larva that is going to the that enters into the metamorphic process. The one is the larval cells, the other one is the imaginal cells. So the larval cells require and do the function that is necessary for the larvae to survive. You know that the only function for a larvae is to eat, voraciously it eats, and it eats and it develops into a, it requires a lot of energy. So what happens is this particular larva will develop. So this particular larva will take up enough energy to transform itself into the adult. So those functions, like the metabolic functions, are dealt by the larval cells, and they also have thousands of imaginal cells. So these cells doesn't have any functions in the larva. They lie in clusters, right? They don't do anything. They'll wait for the signal to differentiate into adult. So these cells are the futures. These cells are going to develop into the organs for the adult later, and they are waiting for the cues, the signals from the animals. Okay. So we have seen what are imaginal cells. Now we see what is imaginal discs. So imaginal discs, we look at it, there are three kinds of imaginal cells. So these imaginal cells, imaginal discs, these cells form the cuticular structures. Cuticular structures are the wings, legs, antennae, eye, head, and thorax, and genitalia. So this particular cells will have a cuticle cover. So those cells that will have the cuticular cover are those organs that have a cuticular cover are going to develop from the imaginal discs. There are some cells. There are another cells called as histoblast nests. So they will create the abdomen. So the imaginal cells forms the cuticular structure. Histoblast nests will form the adult abdomen, and there is each and every organ, right, will have a clusters of imaginal cells. They are going to proliferate to form the adult organ. So three different imaginal cells: the cuticular one, the abdomen one, and the organ-based imaginal cells. You can see the organization of these different imaginal cells and the histoblast nest that are going to develop into future structures. You can see this. You can find these cells. So if you can still make out the imaginal disc with the naked eye, there will be like small local thickenings on the epidermis. If you look at the caterpillar carefully, you can see the skin of the caterpillar will have small thickenings, and these thickenings are the imaginal discs. You can see that in the larval stages itself. So the larval cells, they have a very limited mitotic capacity. That means they cannot divide indefinitely. They will divide to only because they are not required for the adult cells. But the imaginal discs divide rapidly, and they form. You can differentiate them by the rapid cell division, cell proliferation. Okay. So what happens? They proliferate and form a tubular epithelium. So what happens? They divide and form a tube, and they'll create this kind of spiral. You can see this, probably this is a Danish pastry that you might have observed in the bakeries. So similarly, this tube will spiral itself, okay, to form the discs. So it is form the compact spiral. So this is what forms the imaginal discs. This is what you observe as a thickenings in the larvae. During the metamorphosis, the cells further proliferate and started to elongate. So when they elongate, then they called us telescoping out. So you can see that you can see the telescope, right? It's going to be like this, and it will be like extended. So this kind of elongation is called as telescoping. So so later they will telescope out. Before that, we will see another cells. Not only the epidermal cells, there are also some adipithelial cells that are found. They are going to give rise to the muscles and nerves because the non-cuticular structures are formed. Adipithelial cells, probably a one marker. So this is how the imaginal discs are formed. Okay, remember this, Danish Pastry. So how this telescoping out is happening? Okay, so it is due to the expression of genes and the formation of the gradients, as we have been discussing, and several such gradients in this developmental biology class. Okay, so there are first two proteins. So the third instar, if you look at the leg, you'll see the formation of the leg here, how the legs are going to get formed. Okay, at the third instar, larva itself, so there will be a secretion of two morphogens. One is the wingless and the decapentaplegic. Both of them we have studied that right from the very first developmental process, the anterior posterior axis formation of the Drosophila itself. We have seen these proteins. Okay, so these two proteins are expressed from the center cells. So here, so what happens? There is going to be a gradient established. Okay, so this establishment of the gradients create different differential gene expression. Okay, so if you have high concentration of these factors, you see a distal-less gene. Moderate expression, you have a homothorax gene, and the very less expression going to be the Dashan series. Okay, so what happens? High concentration, distal-less genes, moderate concentration, Dashan genes, and the lower concentration, homothorax genes. Sorry for that, I just told it the other way, right? The moderate concentration Dashan and the lower concentration homothorax. So what happens? Those expressing homothorax, that means homothorax is the very, very lower concentration, are going to form the coaxa. Coaxa is proximal structure. We know what is a proximal. This is the insect body. This is going to be the proximal end, and if the wing is going to be like this is going to be the distal end. This is distal. This is proximal. Okay. So if the low concentration produces a proximal structure, that is the coaxa of the leg, whereas the distal will be a high concentration distal-less gene, and the medium in between one, right, is the Dashan gene that will form the middle portion of your legs. So you can see that expression level. You can see the green is the high expression, the red is the very less expression, yellow is the intermediate expression. So you can see this differential expressions, and accordingly, as the cells are getting telescoping out, this is the distal part, this is the what you call it as the proximal part, and in between part is this. So you can see that proximal coaxa and the distal tarsal, and in between tibia and femur. So the concentration of these two, wingless and decapentaplegic, causes differential expression of three different genes. Each of them will give rise to different portions of your legs. Now, again, the same thing. You can see the high concentration and the lower concentration red. You can see that the lower concentration forms the coaxa, adult slug, and the highest concentration produce the tarsus and the pre-tarsus, and Dashan, this what you call this distal, uh, this is going to be thorax, and this is going to be the Dashan. Okay. So the next one is this: how this legs are going to get eversed and differentiated. So the mature this Netherlands star is determined. So how this process of uh, eversion and differentiation is initiated? As I told you, the cells in the leg disc wait for the signals. They are only determined, not differentiated. Only after receiving a molting hormone, 20-hydroxy egg disome is called as 20E. This enzyme is this hormone is called as 20E, and once it receives the 20E, they start differentiation. So then the cells change their shapes, legs are everted. So the zooming out, telescoping out of it will happen, and this happens inside the pupa. And when the fly hatches out from the pupa, you can see this is called as eclosus. The opening of the pupa and emerging of the adult from the pupa is called as eclosing. So when it ecloses, a fully formed functional leg is created. We have seen the formation of the leg. Now we will move into the formation of the wing. When we look into a fly, it may be a Drosophila or it may be a butterfly, we feel that wings are nothing but a very transparent structures, uh, not so complicated structures. When we talk about the Drosophila, probably, but think about the butterfly wing, and it is going to be a uh, very complex phenomenon. You can see the patterns, the pigments, and how they reflect the ultraviolet rays, create unique patterns. Probably some of you might have understood, might have read that, right? Even a very what you call it as unattractive insects will be looking very beautiful when you look them under the ultraviolet rays, because they are specifically tuned uh, to the ultraviolet visionary range. Uh, so this kind of things are very complex, and how this particular structure is formed is an interesting study. You can see that uh, the formation of the wing is much more complex than the formation of the leg or the halter. Halter, probably you know what is a halter, right? A small appendage that is attached near your abdomen, near to your leg. You can see the halter and the leg will have only 10,000 cells. But if you look at the imaginal disc of the wing, that contains 60,000 cells. That shows that the structure and the complexity of the organ that is going to develop from this imaginal disc. So how we can differentiate the wing imaginal disc? By the vestigial gene. If there is a expression of vestigial gene, that means it is going to be a wing imaginal disc, and wing is going to get formed. And also, if you can induce the wing formation in other type of imaginal disc, if you express or if you stimulate the expression of vestigial gene in them. So gene is expressed in another imaginal disc, the wing tissues are. So as usual, we have two different axes, dorsal ventral and the anterior posterior axis. Each of them are defined differently by different gene expressions. As usual, similar to the other developmental process, these two processes are happening simultaneously, but we'll be studying one by one. You can see how complex this structure is, right? You can see specific genes involved, and if you mutate, right, what are all the effects that you can see in the wings, the patterns, right? How the pattern changes in the presence or absence of certain genes. So you should appreciate the complexity of the wing structure, even though it's look very normal structure, very simple structure. So first we'll see the anterior posterior compartments. Very similar to the leg. We have a protein called engrailed. So this engrailed will be expressed only in the posterior part of the wing. You can see this is your wing. Don't compare it to this wing structure. It is a structure of the imaginal disc. Okay, this is not the structure of the wing. It is the structure of the imaginal disc. Don't confuse this structure with this one. Okay, this is the imaginal disc, right? That is going to get telescoping out. Okay, so the expression of the engrailed is only limited to the posterior compartment. So what happened? The engrailed is only in the posterior compartment. So the other engrailed induces the protein called as hedgehog. So the hedgehog is a short-range paracrine factor. Yeah, this is engrailed is a transcription factor that activate the hedgehog. Hedgehog is a short-range paracrine factor. Its influences are going to be very limited. Okay, so what happened? This hedgehog, right, functions only when cells have a receptor to receive it, and the receptors for this hedgehog is only located at the middle of the imaginal disc, where it activates a expression of a protein that is the decapentaplegic. So this decapentaplegic is activated not in the other sides, only in a very narrow stripe of the imaginal disc, only very narrow type of cells in the imaginal discs. So the decapentaplegic is a BMP-like paracrine factor, and this is getting expressed only in the very narrow strip of the imaginal cell. So you have an engrailed transcription factor that activate the hedgehog. The hedgehog in turn is only works when there is a receptor called the patch. So the patch is only present in the middle stripe of cells where this decapentaplegic is expressed. But the decapentaplegic is comparatively a long range paracrine factor, whereas the hedgehog is a short range paracrine factor. So what happens? Decapentaplegic is always co-expressed with another bone morphogenic protein called glass bottom board, GBB. So we have a engrailed hedgehog, DPP, and the GBB. GBB is the glass bottom board. So this both are co-expressed. If you compare these two, right, you can see that DPP compared to DPP, GBP is a long range paracrine factor. Compared to hedgehog, DPP is a long range paracrine factor. Compared to DPP, GBP is a long range paracrine factor. So what is the function of this DPP and BMP? they act, DPP and GBB, both are bone morphogenic proteins. Both DPP and GBB are bone morphogenic proteins. What is the function of them? They activate the MAD transcription factor. How they activate the MAD? By phosphorylation. Okay. So wherever there is a phosphorylation of the MAD, then you can tell that there is a presence of either DPP or GBB. Okay. So you can see that DPP is a short range and GBB is a long range among each other, compared to each other, right? So now you can see the expression. So you have a DPP and GBB expressed at the narrow stripes, and they'll create a gradient, right? The anterior posterior gradient. And you can see here, since DPP is a short range paracrine factor, they can activate the MAD in a very small region. So you can see the DPP here, only the expression of DPP is localized in the posterior regions. DPP mRNA is only found here. So you can see very short range, right? You can see the DPP. But if you look at the GBB, the range is very high. If you look at the hedgehog, it is very much restricted to the narrow stripe. So that is what hedgehog shorter, DPP longer, GBB is even longer range. Okay. So now this two will create a gradient, and cells present in the wing respond differently to different gradients of these two bone morphogenic proteins. Okay. So if you have the high levels of this DPP and GBP, where you will see only at the center, you can see the expression of the protein SPAL. You can see the SPAL. So if you have a high range, you will see the SPAL. And low levels, OMB, a protein called as optomotor blind. This is, sorry, it's a O here. Optomotor blind gene is expressed. So where is the low level expression? You can see the expression of OMB, where both DPP and GBB, you have SPALs. You have, if you have only OMB, you have the only GBB, you have OMB. And when there is no MAD, so the Brinker gene is expressed. So Brinker gene is expressed only in the absence of both GBB as well as the DPP. So depending upon this genes, different structures are arising that you don't have to worry about it, right? So you just understand these things. You can see each of this expression, right? Your SPALs or your OMB or your Brinker or other genes will create a beautiful pattern like this. So this is how the expression and the gradients that are established by the DPP and the GBB create a beautiful pattern of wing. So if you look at the dorsoventral, so dorsoventral again during the second larva instar itself. So remember, this is the third instar. Here it is the second leg is the third instar, whereas the dorsoventral is in the second instar itself. Okay. So there are two genes, apterous and wingless. Okay. There are two genes involved. So apterous is a transcription factor that activates genes for the serrate and fringe protein. So apterous will induce the serrate and fringe proteins, and both are ligands to the Notch receptors. So wherever there is a serrate, it is going to be the dorsal side, and wherever there is a fringe, it is going to be the ventral side. So dorsal side serrate, ventral side fringe. The interaction between these two are very complex and detailedly studied. There are plenty of references for that, which is not required for your course. So you can remember these things. You have for the anterior posterior, you have Engrail, HR, decapentaplegic, and GBB. In GBB and DPP, in third, MAD expression. MAD expression and the gradient created by the TBP, GBP create a differential gene expression and individual structures. For the dorsal ventral axis, you have it is at the second larval star, Aptrus protein is expressed. Aptrus protein actually makes the serrate to express in the dorsal side, and the fringe proteins are expressed in the ventral side. And there is another gene that is expressed in the ventral side is the vestigial gene. Okay, so in between, when you have a overlapping of this abstrus and vestigial gene, you have an expression of wingless expression, and wingless is at the margins. So that's how you have the formation of the this. This is your disc. You can see the engrail created creates the anterior posterior axis, whereas abstrus create the dorsal ventral axis. Both together created the dorsal ventral and the four quadrants of the future wing blade. The gradients that are created by these four different compartments create the formation of the wing. So that is about the formation or the determination of the wing, the part one of our insect metamorphosis. Okay.